Hey folks, Malforian here, and today we're going to be going over Dev Diary 146. It started with a cough, which is the latest Dev Diary for Crusader Kings 3. This is covering disease, the Black Death, funerals. It also covers achievements, but I'm actually going to do that as a separate video, so that'll be coming later on today on the channel as well. So this is going to give us a deep dive into how the new disease mechanic works and how that's going to affect our gameplay in the game once Legends of the Dead launches next week. So we're just going to get straight into it. As they say here in the previous Dev Diaries, they wanted to include epidemics for a long time in CK3, but they wanted to do them bigger and better than CK2 ever did. And I think we've seen this with other systems they've brought in from CK2 into CK3. They do them a lot better than they did in CK2. They don't just like copy paste them over. They do put a lot of effort into making them like the next step up in how these systems work. Plague should be an impactful part of the game, ranging from mild illness in a localized area to the sweeping spread of disease across the continents. They're talking about the Black Death there. There's a whole section about that coming up later in the Dev Diary, so stick around for that. Not only should they cause death in their wake, but those who survive should have their trust in your rulership tested. They covered this last week in the Legends and Legitimacy Dev Diary, where they were talking about if you don't like hold back disease, if you let disease just run rampant in your realm, people are going to look at your legitimacy and think you're not a rightful king, you didn't protect us, so we don't see you as our legitimate ruler. They're going to look elsewhere for a ruler potentially. So it's going to be all about building your resistance to disease for your realm, and then that's going to help you weather the storm and also make your people see you as more legitimate. If you're better at holding off disease, they're going to think, oh, you're a good king, and you're going to be more and more legitimate in their eyes. And how is disease actually going to work? Well, each bounty with a holding is susceptible to an outbreak of a disease, and there are many factors that can influence the chance of that outbreak. They are the development of the county, so the higher the development, the less chance there is you're going to have an outbreak. The terrain of the province, I imagine if it's like desert or maybe mountains, it's kind of harder for the disease to spread there. The number of buildings, the specific buildings such as trade posts and markets. Obviously, if you've got trade posts and markets, there's going to be those trade routes coming through, which aren't technically in the game yet. I'm sure they're coming next year, but having those kind of trading areas mean the disease has got more chance to spread. Cultural era, I imagine the later we get in the game, the harder it is for them to spread, apart from the Black Death. If there is a nearby epidemic already, so I wonder if this means you're going to get more like clusters of disease in a local place, which is pretty cool. And then game rules, obviously you can turn these down, turn them up, however you want in the game rules. And then when an outbreak occurs, there are one of three intensities: minor, major, and apocalyptic. Apocalyptic sounds pretty bad. The intensity impacts how much the disease can spread, how likely it is to spread to uninfected provinces, and how long an infection in a province lasts. So obviously the minor ones aren't going to really go that far, but the later ones are going to spread all along your borders and elsewhere, I would think. And then in the UI, you can actually see how these diseases are doing. So there's a realm plague, there's a nearby plague, there's a world plague, and these are all different ones. I guess are far away, but you are being told about them basically, I guess, in case you were thinking of traveling near them or just to keep an eye on them in the world if you're interested. This one's killed 8, 12, 19. None of these too bad. The dancing plague. It's not going to be that bad, is it? Let's be honest. You can see all these here. You can see how intense they are, what the modifiers are, and basically how bad they've been at the moment as well. Each disease will leave the infected with a specific associated trait, and any character located in an infected province is at risk of getting sick. All outbreaks will get a dynamic name. Some will be named after the culture of the area. Others will claim the name of the region's ruler, since if you were a truly legitimate ruler, the gods would not punish them for such disease, right? I mean, they definitely wouldn't. It'd be interesting to see how that works. I do wonder if it's based on your legitimacy. I wonder if you have very low legitimacy already, then people kind of see it as your fault it's here. And if you have high legitimacy, it takes the name of the region instead. That would be a cool way for it to work, because I think that kind of plays into like the roleplay of your realm populace thinking, well, King Richard here, he's not a very good ruler. King Richard's plagues infected us because he's so incompetent. Whereas if you're very legitimate and people think you're a good ruler, maybe they just be like, oh, that area of the map is infected by something, and that's why it's happening. It is cool that it takes these different names from different ways. Hopefully it means we don't see the same names popping up all the time. Makes it a little bit more interesting on the map. Every ongoing epidemic can be seen on the map too, both as an effect on the normal map mode, and it has its own dedicated map mode, which you've seen before, where you can zoom out and just see all the plagues on the map, where they're all being affected. And then if you're on the normal map view, the kind of red text you can see here, you'll see that on the map. If you're kind of just playing along normally, you can get a spot of disease heading your way without having to go into the plague map mode every time. But it's cool that it's getting its own map mode. I do like that when they add those. It's a lot easier to keep an eye on things. As you can see here then, this is the special map mode, and then this is if you're just playing normally, you can see that red effect on the map. So you know to avoid that area in the future. Maybe you were going to go to war there and you're like, nah, you know what, I'll go to war somewhere else and I'll come back when you're not riddled with disease. You could actually, I guess, let the disease play its course and then attack. I wonder if that would be a good strategy to take advantage of it. I imagine there's going to be some instability in the area afterwards, so a good time to attack, I guess. But then if you do zoom in closer, they hide the epidemic pulsing blood and instead show a desolate grey land now haunted with death. So actually there's kind of 3 ways then that it's shown. You can see it on the disease map, you can see it on your normal map, but then if you zoom in, I guess they don't want your whole view to just be this red blob. It is cool, it actually changes the colour of the land to being grey. So again, at a glance, you can see this. I like how that works. That's actually a really cool way for this to work, where if you're really zoomed in, if you're doing a war again, and you're just looking around the map quickly, you can see like, oh, this is a disease area. Maybe I want to avoid it, or maybe I want to go through there and take advantage of that if it weakens garrisons and things like that. I really like the idea that there's 3 different ways you can see it on the map, and they all work pretty well, I think, as well. And then when there is a epidemic nearby or in your realm, you'll be notified by a new HUD widget, which if you click will open the map mode and will show you info on the ongoing epidemics. And it is this little icon here. So next to where you have like raiding or war notifications, you'll have this new epidemic notification as well if there's any near you. And then you can hover over it and it will show you the plagues that are nearby or in your realm. So again, you can quickly see at a glance, you're not always going to be keeping an eye on the plague map mode. If there's one creeping up towards you, if you're paying attention with something else, if you're doing a wedding or a tournament or something like that, you'll see this icon pop up and you'll think, okay, I've got to go look and check where this is. I like how it's kind of user-friendly. You can see it everywhere, which is fantastic. And then once you see this, you can then click the different fevers and it will show you this next UI, which will show you the risk of being infected by the epidemic and what chance there is of it spreading. So this cough epidemic here, you can see the domain infections, you can see the realm infections, and you can see the world infections that this disease has gone through. It is a major disease, so this is going to be one, as you can see on the map, it's spread all around this area. And I guess you can see this like light color. I guess this is where the realms could be affected, and the black and green kind of more saturated ones are where it actually is now. If you're one of these adjacent realms, it's got more chance of affecting you. And I do actually like looking at this, the rivers actually take effect with this, I guess because there's traffic going up and down the rivers. Obviously you don't see it in game. It would be cool if you did see it in game, like little boats going up and down the rivers and things like that. You can see though from this screenshot that the rivers actually carry the disease potentially up them, especially in Eastern Europe or in India, I would think, where there's a lot of rivers. You could see a lot of disease spreading quickly up those rivers. So something to keep in mind, especially I guess if you have your realm capital on a river. It's going to be risky because I guess you're going to get more disease than if your realm capital was in a mountain or a hill. Again, makes sense historically. If you're in a hill or a mountain, less chance, you've got a bit more protection there. But if you're on a river, you get the benefits of that. But then also in this now, you've got more of a chance of a disease getting to you because you're on a riverway. And that is obviously where kind of traffic occurs in this time period as people are going up and down the river. I really like this UI though. It gives a lot of information. At a glance, you can see where it is and where to look out for and all that cool stuff. So again, fantastic work by the team there. The chance of a disease spreading to your neighboring province, as well as across 2 sea provinces, is influenced by many factors such as how developed the provinces are, their buildings, cultural traditions, and if they have immunity from prior infection and more. So some secret things as well. The prior infection thing is interesting as well. So yeah, if you've had this disease before, it looks like you build up an immunity to it potentially, and that's going to help your resistance to future versions of the same disease. This is going to be especially good if there's a lot of wars going on. They did mention previously some of these diseases can follow armies, especially if their resources are low. And if there's a lot of wars going on at the same time, I guess it helps stop like the spiral of reinfection just constantly happening. You do build up this immunity. That's going to help you in the future. Obviously, you've got to survive for that to happen, so it's not as easy as it sounds. And then speaking of province infection, you can see here that every province tracks how infected it is as a percentage. Different infection thresholds will cause different modifiers to be applied to the province and the holder. So this one is Mesembria, has a 60% chance of being infected tomorrow. The maximum it can be affected is 100%, and then plague resistance is 40. So looking at that, does that mean the plague resistance basically just gets deducted off the maximum? And that gives you the 60%. So if you have plague resistance 100, can you just never get infections in that county? It looks like that is how it might work. We'll obviously find out later on. And then these are the modifiers that take effect once you hit the certain threshold. So 10%, you get development decline by -2 a month, which is quite a lot. Plague danger +20 if you're traveling. Over 50%, you get -3 development. You get a flat control decline. I don't know if that means it just makes it so you can never gain control, or it's weird that it's 0. I would have thought it'd be like 0.1 negative or something, but There might be some other modifiers that take effect there. -2 popular opinion, and then +40 danger if you're traveling through there. Over 80%, -4 development per month. Like, some of these could take major effect on your realm if you don't get them under control. Control decline, speaking of, -0.1 a month, so that kind of makes a bit more sense. Popular opinion, -3, and plague danger, +60. I would have thought the popular opinion would be worse. I would have thought these, like, over 80% infected. I would have thought that'd be, like, way higher. -3 isn't that bad. It's not even -3 per month. It just says a -3. I'm not too sure. Let me know what you think. I would have thought that would be way higher. If 80% of a barony or county is affected, I would have thought that'd be like -30 or something. They really wouldn't be happy with you. Maybe that's amended by your legitimacy. Maybe if you have worse legitimacy, that makes that number worse. And if you have better legitimacy, it kind of doesn't affect the populace. They're kind of seeing you doing the most you can. And they're not like happy about it, but they can see you're doing something and not just leaving them to die. The maximum infection rate is reduced by plague resistance. So there we go. That is how it works. You basically reduce the plague resistance from the maximum rate, and that gives you the 60, as we saw before, which can be increased by various means. You can preemptively increase it by constructing buildings that raise it, such as the new hospice building chain or the burial site duchy building. And as we can see in the screenshot here, this is the new hospice building chain. This gives you 0.2 tax per month. It gives you +5 plague resistance. And then for the holder of this holding, it gives 0.1 piety per month as well. So a nice spread of rewards. And obviously, as you go higher and higher, it's going to increase all of these as well. There is a bit of an incentive to build this anyway. It isn't just plague resistance. You do get a little bit of money and a little bit of piety as well. A nice little bonus if you don't have plagues, that you're still getting something from these buildings. So a pretty good building to build, I would think, especially once you get the Black Death and all those coming through. You're going to want to have those, I would think. And then as we covered in a previous dev diary, the court physician is getting some new court position tasks. So very much like they were on the council, they now have these 4 buttons that you can choose between if you want to isolate your capital, close the gates, help prevent disease, all those good things. And then in this screenshot, you can see they're doing control plagues in this example. That gives you plague resistance +10. I don't know if that's a certain position on the map or just in general. It looks like it's just in general, gives you +10, which is okay. It's not too crazy, but I guess it could help reduce the spread of some diseases whilst you're kind of paying for that to happen. And this one is 0.3 a month, so not too expensive. Obviously, you'd only activate this, I guess, when there's a plague nearby. I guess you could always have it so it reduces a chance of a plague starting, but I think I would generally turn this on when there's a plague nearby, some kind of disease that's near my borders. I'd probably turn it to this to help prevent it from happening in the future. But I'm sure the other buttons here give you some other bonuses that are probably better kind of day to day when there isn't a disease happening. But unfortunately, they don't actually go into what they all do. We just get told about this one. So again, this one looks pretty interesting. Not too expensive either. It's not too bad for +10 resistance. Legends of the Dead also features 3 new illnesses that can take the form of plagues, measles, the bloody flux, and holy fire. I like the holy fire one. As I mentioned before, measles was especially deadly to children, lowering their health even more than everyone else's. This uses 2 new modifiers they've added for child and elderly health respectively. Most diseases are more deadly to the elder by default, so these diseases could really mess up your succession. If you have measles come by, it could wipe out all your children or, all your good children. People who disinherit everyone, make them take the vows. I just want one heir. Well, that one heir could just die now. I mean, obviously that can happen anyway, but with these diseases, it's a bit more random. I think it's going to be more difficult to kind of like keep a specific character safe and be like, that's my one character. That's who's going to succeed after me. A disease could come through, kill them off, make them infirm, I would imagine, and just cause a bad time. I do like how this is going to randomize campaigns a little bit more because you're not going to be able to just plan everything perfectly, I don't think. And then as they mentioned here, everything in here is highly moddable. You can create your own custom epidemics, change how they spread, outbreak, infect characters, or even how the blood splatter looks on the map. I'm sure there's going to be some interesting blood splatter ones on the Steam Workshop before too long. This is going to be cool. I think you could probably change this into other things as well. I wonder if you have a mod that's more magical focused, if you could change a disease to do different things. So it would maybe like give you magical powers whilst it was there or something. I'm not too sure. I don't make mods. As I always say, I play great mods. I have no idea how they work. But I would imagine you'd be able to change this to do different things that aren't just epidemics, or kind of retool it in a way to make cool things happen instead of bad things. Both Plagues and Legends come with a handful of game rules that let you control how they play, as well as specific rules for the Black Death, which they're going to cover very soon on how that's going to work. And then as we always see with all these, you can change like the Black Death frequency, how it happens, the plague frequency, legend spread chance, legend cost. So some of the achievements, which they're going to go into later, and I'm going to do a separate video about, you could make them a little bit easier to hit by just changing the numbers here. I don't think that will affect achievements in the campaign. You can change all this if you don't want plagues and disease causing trouble in your game. You can just turn all this down or turn them off potentially, and it's not going to affect you. Or if you want like a hard mode, you can just turn it all to maximum and see what carnage, see what Nurgle brings to your realms. And then as they say here, speaking of the Black Death, let's get talking about it. So look at that. That is a pretty bad Black Death. It has taken effect. All of Northern Europe and the Baltics just having a bad time. And I imagine it's going to have messed up some realms. So no history of the medieval world wouldn't be complete without the reference to the Black Death, which is pretty ironic for a game about that time period, that it's been, 3 years till we've got it in the game, but with how good it looks, I guess I can forgive them. But that is true. No game is complete without it either, and we do finally have it. Killing up to half of Europe's population over the course of 7 years, the bubonic plague that swept across Europe, North Africa and the Middle East altered the very fabric of society. Everyone from the lowest man to the highest king found themselves affected by this pestilence. From the onset of development, we knew the Black Death had to be done proper justice, and it really does look like they have done. This naturally involves a bit of a balancing act. On one hand, the Black Death should behave within the confines of the mechanics we've built, so that the reaction is natural and swift, presenting you, the player, with a new set of ways to deal with a unique event without complicating matters with no real gain. After all, the plague itself is the scariest amongst a whole host of new potential pandemics that could occur. On the other hand, it's the Black Death. Anyone should feel the fear of God and be reaching for their rosaries when they see the seeping dark mass wend its way onto their screen. I do agree with this. I think they don't want to make it too complicated that people just get annoyed with it and turn it off. But they do want it to be something that you really have to worry about. Think about if you play like in the steppes or in like the northeastern part of the map, you're not really worrying about the Mongols until the Mongols come. And then you're like, okay, I've got to really deal with this. I mean, you can build up because you know they are coming, but I think it's a similar kind of situation. They want it to be something cool that happens, but they don't want it to kind of get super annoying and something that you just kind of micromanage and it just gets super boring to do every time. And hopefully they have got that balance correct. And this is the event that obviously triggers it to happen. I looked and behold a green horse. This is Darkening Horizon. The Black Death is coming. Get ready for it in your realm. As such, the tack they took involved a deeper look into how the plague rolled across the land. Like any good movie monster, half the fear is the anticipation of the reveal rather than the monster itself. It's one thing to be dealing with a plague, but consider instead the stormy horizon. First come the missives of death and devastation, then the bedraggled and petrified refugees staggering across your borders, and then all of a sudden your armpits begin to swell. And oh no, you've got it as well. It would be interesting if this kind of affected like culture drift or something. If the plague like comes in from the east, like historically it did, it would be cool if this somehow like pushed cultures like across the map. Obviously, it would have to be kind of like very finely designed and like how it works, so it didn't just push them all across. And potentially you could see like hybridized cultures. Maybe hybridizing a culture would be cheaper if both are affected by the Black Plague. That would kind of show like we're kind of banding together and we see ourselves in this new way because we fought off the disease together. That would be awesome, actually. I'm sure there might be a mod that does it, but that would be a fantastic addition. I think that would be really interesting to do. And that is the frame of mind they wanted players to be in when the plague erupts. They want you to kind of have this kind of growing dread, and then it appears on the map, and you're kind of hopefully ready for it. When the scythe starts swinging, there's not a whole lot you can do anymore, but the precious moments before the wicked blade reaps its harvest are the ones worth investigating. So we've seen this before. The Black Death, pestilence stalks this land. This is the beginning of the bad times. And then the actual mechanics of the Black Death follow the pattern laid out by the very large epidemics in-game. The notable difference is that unless you're incredibly unlucky or have a truly massive empire, in which case, no sympathy, if you've done a lot of map painting, you're going to get hit by it, and happen to have it take hold within your realm, you'll be getting a fair warning of the coming storm. So yeah, if you have a large realm that's kind of downwind of where it's coming, you're going to know about it. You can hopefully take stock a little bit. Maybe you'll have chance to quickly build a building or something to get ready for it. But if you have a massive empire that's very near where it spawns, obviously it's going to hit you without warning. And you're going to be having a bad time. But again, you've got a massive empire. It's kind of your own fault. So maybe you shouldn't have done that. Or maybe you should. It's just interesting to play through. As the panic mounts, you'll be able to, at the very least, begin to make provisions for protecting your realm, aided or hindered by the set of a unique Black Death events that will give you the opportunities to stock up some counties beforehand. These vary from calming panic crowds right through from instructing your physician to dissect infected bodies to try and glean some meager information. So we are going to get events linked to this, like a whole event chain of things that happen. I would imagine, think of like how tournaments work, where every couple of days you get an event based on your tournament. It looks like whilst the Black Plague is heading in your direction, you're going to be able to have these events pop up. I wonder if it's based on how good your physician is, maybe, and you'll be able to build up your defenses ready for it. You know, as it says, try gain some resistance through investigating the dead, or potentially build up resistance other ways as well, you know, or just lock the gates and let it do what it does and hopefully you survive. They're not going to spoil any of the events further here, but between them and the advanced warning players get, the Black Death becomes less strictly about waiting for the inevitable and more about the race against time. You will have to utilize all your options to the fullest to even withstand it, let alone escape relatively unscathed. As with any apocalyptic level disease, the damage wrought by the plague can be mighty. More developed areas of your realm will suffer harder in comparison, and the sickness can wipe out entire branches of a family. The issue with the Black Death in this case is its violent effects. Its modifiers are brutal, its cocktail of death and infectiousness make for the single greatest consistent threat to a realm in the entire game. I can't wait for this. Let me know what you think in the comments, but I can't wait to see what this does to the game. Having entire branches of your dynasty getting wiped out, it looks like it can really wreck certain areas. The higher the development, the worse it hits you. I guess that makes sense. If you have like a very rural area, yeah, people could die, but at the end of the day, you know, everyone knows really how to do farming. You just, you know, plant the crops and do it. Obviously, it's a bit more complicated than that, but it's a lot easier to do that than high development like banking or something, if you think of it that way. So I can see why it affects the higher development, because it affects that a lot worse than, say, farming, where you can just replace people at the end of the day. Whereas the higher things are a little bit more difficult. This could really cause trouble for these high development regions of the game if it hits them the hardest. And then as they say here, this dev diary has been rather lengthy, and yes, if you've stuck around this long, make sure you've hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. This will be a quite sizable video. So they're going to leave the Black Death there, and we'll all discover more about it when we're actually playing the content itself. And then one of the last bits they're going to cover here are funerals. We're going to get funerals in the game now, because of course with plague comes death, and with that you need time to mourn your lost family and friends. And with all this desolation, there also comes the opportunity to remember the dead. With Legends of the Dead, we're introducing a new type of activity, funerals. Oh, so this is going to be an activity type. That's interesting how they've done it. I kind of thought it'd just be a decision. So host a funeral, assemble the weeping realm for a funeral, a chance to give a proper send-off to a venerated member of the nobility. The rewards from this can be opinion modifiers, stress loss, piety gain, and legitimacy gain. And you can't hold one for 5 years, which is, I guess, a little bit weird. So if somebody dies, if you have another person die quickly, you can be like, nah, we had a funeral recently, guys. We can't have another one. What are you talking about? You crazy person. So yeah, this is going to be an activity. I wasn't expecting that. As I said, I thought this would just be a click a decision and you get an event and you're done. But you actually have to travel to it, have a funeral. You can hold a funeral for any deceased member of your family in the past 5 years, and the new specific intent mourn is available as default, allowing you to lose some stress after going through a process of grief. So this works like all activities. You travel there, you set the path, and then you can mourn a specific person. I wonder what the other intents are. I hope you can seduce people still. That would just be funny if you could do that. And then there must be the other options, maybe not recreation, but like you're going there to pay respects, but maybe you're not super interested in going, but you want to show your face. If maybe your liege is having a funeral, you're going to go there, say hello, and then leave. But if you could seduce his wife at the same time, I think we'd all do that, wouldn't we? The activity planner will suggest the best place in your realm to host a funeral, prioritizing baronies with a temple and high-level temples within that. If you choose one of them, you'll gain extra piety as a reward. So I guess you could have like one temple that has all your deceased relatives in if you could hold a funeral for all the important ones. That would be awesome. It'd be amazing if there was like a special UI for that and you could see them like in there and you could click on them and it gave you like an overview of their life. That would be amazing, but that sadly isn't in here. I guess we might get a mod that does that. That would be amazing, like a family tomb and all your ancestors are in there. The different levels of the ceremonials activity option also offer better final rewards for a higher gold cost, focused on piety, legitimacy, and stress loss. The first phase of the funeral is the wake before the burial, and it features all guests reminiscing about the life of the deceased, their memories together, and their more characteristic traits. They may also interact with each other, and even in the distressed times, there may be someone waiting patiently just to get a hook or increase the funeral numbers. Oh, so you can go with a murder intent and be like, I'm going to attend this funeral and I'm going to kill somebody there. So yeah, there are some different options you can choose for the intent, which is awesome. And here we go, the last chance. A quiet bow and I depart. Make a speech promising to rule in their honor or speak of their virtues. So you get these different options as well, which is cool. I do like how you get this like grayed out version, kind of shows obviously who they were. The burial phase has a different description and general flavor depending on your faith's tenets and will reflect your religious traditions, not always being a burial per se. Oh, so I wonder if we're going to get like Viking longships, you know, where they put them in the ship, set it on fire and like pushed it out into the sea. I'm sure that was a real thing, or maybe I've just read too many books. So I wonder if we're going to get versions of that depending on your faith and your religious traditions. That would be awesome if there's all these different versions of it, so you're not playing the same one out every time. All throughout the celebration, active pulse actions will inform you of what the other guests are getting up to, bringing the activity to life. No pun intended. There definitely was a pun intended there, Mr. Paradox. I'm going to say definitely was. So you are going to get these events. So we see everything else at the moment, all the other activities. You get these little things that happen. If I'm honest, they go away so quick, I don't even notice them, but they are there if you want to keep track of them. Funerals mainly reward you with piety and legitimacy as a moment to reflect on the brevity of life and the legacy that we leave behind. But as we've seen, you can also, potentially kill someone. I want to be able to seduce people. If it's not in their Paradox, do add it before launch. And the rewards, not too bad. Plus 50 legitimacy, 312 piety, and you lose 9 stress. That's pretty good, I think. Not too bad at all. And then the last bit here is disease decals and how to prevent them, which is a funny way of saying like how the diseases look on your body. Everyone's favorite character here, of course. And you can basically just turn this off if you don't want to see all the like mangled mess of your character, if you're a bit squeamish, or you just really don't want to be seeing on there. If you have like a phobia of something, I guess, you can just turn these off. So you can go into the options and show graphical disease or injuries or not. So yeah, if it's a bit too much for you, or you just don't want to see it all the time, you can turn these off, because the 2 new diseases, smallpox and measles, have like whole new things that can affect your whole body. As you can see, this is affecting like more than his face, and the same over here with Matilda. It's affecting more than her face as well. And you might not want to see that all the time if there's a lot of diseases going on. So it is cool they've thought about that, and you can turn that off if you want to. And then the very last bit is there are some new clothing things coming in for your court physicians. They look quite nice. New overalls, new, protection against the disease definitely helped. You can see the ruler here being like, yeah, I'm not too sure about what you're trying to do here. Be cautious, as we usually do in the game. That is the Dev Diary for this week. That covers diseases, Black Death, and all the mechanics around that. As I mentioned before, the rest of the Dev Diary, which I will leave as a link in the description as always down below, just covers achievements, and I'm going to do that in a separate video because this one has been long enough on its own, and I think achievements is like a little bit away from that, so I'm going to do that as a separate video coming later today. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Are you happy with how they've implemented diseases? I think it looks really cool. I like how they've thought about how it travels up waterways and how you can kind of combat it as well. And then the Black Death stuff just sounds awesome. I can't wait to do a campaign and have that just ravage everything. All your fine laid plans just coming to naught as your realm kind of goes to pieces and really destroys you as you try fight it off, try and survive, and try get that achievement as well. But anyway, we'll leave it there for today. As always, hit that like, subscribe if you're new here. Next week is the launch of the DLC on Monday. I'm going to be doing at least 1 live stream on that day, and we're just going to kind of do a general gameplay session, just kind of showing off as much of this as we can. And then I'll have a new campaign coming, probably doing one of the achievements. There's an awesome one, to spoil it slightly, where you start in Scotland and basically have to make up a legend about you being from ancient Egypt, being a descendant of a pharaoh. I think we're going to do that as the first campaign on the channel with this DLC as well, because that will show off the legend system, and then obviously we'll have diseases happening around that anyway. So if you're interested in that, make sure you are subscribed. And then next week as well, I imagine we'll get the patch notes on Monday morning, so I'll do a video about that as well. So plenty of stuff coming on the channel. Lots and lots of Crusader Kings coming this year. This is obviously the first, the new DLC. We'll have Landless and the Byzantine stuff coming next. And then we have some other cool stuff coming later in the year as well. Plenty for us to be playing, plenty for us to be talking about. Leave those comments down below. I'll be replying to everybody as they come in. But we'll leave it there for today, and I'll see you in the next one.